and welcome to the Lowell Planning Board for Monday, May 21st, 2012. Tonight we have several public hearings on. Matter of 5 new public hearings, actually 6 public hearings and 1 matter under old business. I'd like to waive the order of the agenda if there's no objections and take the Plain Street project first. Board members have any objections?
No objection.
Hearing none? Okay, we'll start off with a site plan review of 211 Plain Street. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by R.B. Lowell, LLC for site plan review for a project located at 199/211 Plain Street. The proposal includes the construction of 4,700 square foot retail building in the parking lot of Meadowbrook Center, west of the Center Commercial Building. Additional parking spaces are proposed along the southern boundary of the site and adjacent to the abandoned rail line. The parking lot expansion will create a net increase of 74 parking spaces. The 563 square foot property is located in the regional retail, which is the RR zoning district, and requires site plan review under section 11.4 of the zoning code. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, George Theolides Jr., 133 Market Street, Lowell. And I'm here this evening with Roger Hirschhorn and Steve Glowacki. Roger is the principal project manager for a new LLC formed to acquire and purchase and develop the remaining property at Plain Street, and I say remaining beyond that, which is occupied currently by Target. Roger's company is a Manhattan-based company. They actually are the owners or operators of over 200 properties around the country, and their specialty is coming in and fixing up and taking over and redeveloping and refilling shopping centers. That's their purpose here. They want to come and complete the Plain Street Shopping Center, Meadowbrook as it's referred to. If you recall, and I think anyone who recalls about 5 years ago when Target first came in, they had their plans, and they were principally involved, obviously, with tearing down the then Hannaford store and building their own project, but they made clear from the outset that they don't like owning and dealing with real estate, and it was their intent at some point to have somebody else come in and do it, but they didn't just easily give it away. They were looking for the right developer, and they feel that in Roger's company, they found the right company to come in and do it. The other thing about the Target folks when they were here was they went out of their way to make sure that none of the people there were displaced, if at all possible. They did their best to try and help everybody else out there. And interestingly, Roger's company is doing the same thing. So after I finish a couple more remarks, Roger will just say a couple of things about what their plans are. I think, as you know, we had an informal hearing before where we were able to run some of our information by you, but we're here to finish all of that, and also at some point Mr. Glowacki will be telling you about some of the adjustments we've made based on the commentary from the DPD, Aaron and Craig and Joe, as well as the various department heads. In the real reason, I guess, the underlying reason we're here is that in addition to working on and fixing the area up, Roger and his company intend to build a new building, new 4,700 square foot building, which is basically the nexus of why we're here for site plan review. And Steve will be showing you more information about that. But not only is he intending to do that, but they're in the process of acquiring additional property to the right and to the rear of the Lincoln School, which is basically the far right of the shopping center, which they intend to use to add 74 new parking spaces and to help the traffic flow. There'll be access to the rear of the building as a result of that. I want to point out that we've already been to the Conservation Commission and run our plans by them, and they've all reviewed them and approved them, and I think we came up with a good plan of how we could deal, especially with the area between the shopping center itself and the connector. Roger can give you more details about for the people he already has lined up and what he intends to do. I think it's important, though, for the city of Lowell and for the folks, and for you folks, to understand that this is a company that's prepared to spend a couple of $1 million on this particular project. It's going to provide new construction jobs. It's going to provide new jobs for people in the stores that will be added to the location. It's going to provide new retail opportunities for Lowell and Lowellians to be able to shop right here in Lowell. That'll be gasoline savings and money savings for them for not having to go out of town or out of state. It'll provide new state tax revenues in the form of additional sales and meals taxes and payroll earnings taxes for the state, and it'll provide new real estate taxes for the city of Lowell. As I mentioned before, we've been coordinating with Craig and Joe and Aaron, and Steve will give you more particulars about the commentaries and how he's dealt with those. And I'm just going to finish up for the moment by introducing you to Roger Hirschhorn, who's the principal project director, and just ask him to say a few words. You might have seen his picture in the paper last night, or yesterday, I should say, sort of his own little welcome to Lowell. And so, Roger, maybe you can just give us a hello and a couple of words.
Good evening, Roger Hirschhorn, 810 7th Avenue, New York, New York. Between George's introduction and the article yesterday, I'm not sure what more I can add, but for you, I made sure that the Yankees lost 5 of the last 6. It was not easy. If you want, I know last time I was here, I went through the tenant lineup. I can do it again if the board wants me to. The tenants we've lined up, new tenants coming into the center. In the Blockbuster space is Sleepy's, GNC, and Hair Cuttery. In the old Bally's space, we have Five Below and Best Fitness. There's one space that remains that I don't have a lease sign for yet. And moving down next to Marshall's, we have Dots, Eblin's, the Children's Place. Since the last time I was here, I have a handshake with a 4th tenant for that space. That's not signed yet. So as of right now, there's only, assuming that gets signed, there's only 1 space that's vacant. And we're happy to be in the city of Lowell. We've been treated and received very well, and appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So without further ado, as they say, I'm going to ask Steve Glowacki to come up and just run you through the project as well as his responses. I think we've given you a written commentary that he sent along, but he can follow up on that.
Hi, Steve Glowacki. I'm the project manager with R.J. O'Connell. We are the civil engineers on the project. We're at 80 Montvale Ave, Stoneham, Massachusetts. If I may approach the boards and describe.
Sure.
The proposed project consists of 2 main components. As was mentioned earlier, we will be expanding the parking area into what is to be an acquired parcel, the former Boston and Maine Railroad parcel. And there'll be some reconfiguration of the parking area south of what is now Lincoln Tech. The net result of that parking reconfiguration will be an increase of 74 parking spaces. The other component of this, as mentioned as well, is a 4,700 square foot retail building sitting west of the other main buildings, Building B and C. Currently, I don't believe a tenant's been chosen at this point. This configuration displaces a certain amount of parking, but again, as I mentioned, the net result is an increase of 74 parking spaces. In response to department comments, we have shown a reconfiguration from what you have for the plans on record. What we've done is opened up an aisleway so as not to dead-end vehicular traffic in this particular bay. In addition, there was some comments and questions about screening for dumpster areas and service areas. And what we've done is rotated the building 180 degrees so that the loading was further away from the River Meadow Brook, and we were able to better screen it with landscape materials as well. Stormwater from the new development, which is the additional pavement area along the east side of Building C, will be collected in catch basins, put through a particle separator, and then into infiltration basins, which will infiltrate most of the water into the ground with provisions for overflow, which will eventually outlet to the River Meadow Brook through an existing drainage system. We met all the stormwater requirements of a new development, as well as treating some additional area to better treat the water along the east side of the project. In terms of comments, we have addressed the comments that we received, I think, from both the engineering department and planning as well. And if you'd like, I can run down the comments specifically.
If you would, please. Thank you.
Sure. The first comment was in regards to some existing landscape islands, and I'll come back to this board here. It was mentioned that there were 2 existing islands over here that the project, upon reconfiguration, displaced. What we've done is, again, in rotating this building, it enabled us to put in additional areas which would be able to house some shade trees, which would be consistent and in line with what is here. We'll have a shade tree over here and a shade tree over here as well. So we were able to carry that the existing configuration of the shade trees through the parking area. And also we have additional landscape areas around the building which would be sufficient for planning. Comment number 2 I had addressed somewhat already, and that was in regards to dead-ending the parking area. And it was mentioned that we had, in the previous configuration, a dead-end scenario where a vehicle would have to back out of this area. And what we've done is opened up an aisleway through here to enable those cars to pass and not dead-end this island. Comment number 3 was in regards to...
I'm sorry, can I stop you for 1 second?
Sure,
Go back to that dead-end thing.
Sure.
So how did you open up an aisleway?
Yeah, I'll show you side by side. The original plans as submitted showed a dead-end configuration here with a backout for vehicles. Okay. And, and that was in an effort to maximize the parking, of course. Mm-hmm. What we've done here is opened up an aisleway this way so cars could come down and pull out here and they wouldn't be trapped by other cars in that area, okay, if there were, in fact, to be no spaces down in this corner.
Okay, thank you.
Comment number 3 was in regards to the transformer location. On the previous version, it was shown down by the River Meadow Brook, and because we were able to rotate the building 180 degrees, we moved the transformer up on the other side of the building. And again, we have sufficient space here for that to be screened, as well as provide space for a shade tree in that area, as I mentioned earlier. Comment number 4, I can make some commentary to a response to that, but I think the issue in general is because there's no tenant selected at this point in time, we don't have a feel for the exact materials or the look, but the understanding is from Roger is that these improvements would be designed so they would work in conjunction with the improvements that are being done on building B and C. so that the plaza would have a consistent feel throughout. Number 5, and again, I addressed this somewhat, in regards to the service areas, we will provide sufficient screening around these dumpster areas. And also, although I don't have a revised plan as of yet, I know there was some mention at the informal hearing 2 weeks ago that we also screen the dumpster area in the back here, and we'll certainly do that along the back of Building C. Comment number 6, although we've provided sufficient treatment of the stormwater, in speaking with Mr. Hirschhorn earlier today, we decided that we can certainly go ahead and install a particle separator in place of the manhole number 1. And I believe that was a comment from the city engineer as well as planning. So the intent would be to take this last manhole prior to discharging to the River Meadowbrook and provide a particle separator there as well. So you have several redundant treatment facilities in here that are going to treat not only the stormwater as it's coming through here, but also this existing stormwater that will be collected in the catch basin and then go through the particle separator. So we're treating quite a bit of stormwater. In terms of the city engineer comments, there was a question about a driveway permit needed, and although our comment, we feel that it's not necessarily needed, I think the worry was that it would be a prolonged, protracted review process. But my understanding is that it in fact will be based on the materials we've already submitted, and I think that's our understanding of the review process for the driveway permit. Stormwater, a comment from the city engineer was that dewatering should be shown on the plans. Typically, that's not something we do, and the reason we don't is when a contractor comes on board to build such a thing, they will devise the dewatering system based on the phasing of construction for this area. So in other words, if we turned around and said, well, we're going to provide dewatering here and here, they may in fact start up at this end. So the dewatering in general is sort of pardon the pun, a liquid facet of the project because it moves around quite a bit as to what they're going to do for dewatering. And there was a similar comment about the drain manhole becoming a particle separator, which I've just addressed. In terms of snow and ice, snow removal, there is a snow removal section in our stormwater report, which sufficiently explains what our intent is to do and how the snow is managed on a day-to-day basis through the winter. And that, of course, includes that there'll be no snow disposed of in the city right away. And the last comment that I have on the sheet here is domestic water. There was a comment about the domestic water, and I think it was in response to what we had shown for utilities on utilities and connections to the retail building. We showed a domestic line off here. The end result is we will certainly provide a domestic water line from the domestic water feed, not the fire loop. So at that point, I'd like to open it up to any questions you may have.
I just saw one, did you get the one from the traffic engineer? I know it had 2 comments, and you took care of the first part, which was, the second part about the parking lot aisle abutting the new building. But the first one mentioned about maybe a trip generation to see if the signalization on Plain Street, if it has to be any changes or not. Did you get that comment?
I was going to comment on that,
Right.
if you don't mind.
I know it was 2 parts, and he answered one of them already, so, okay.
Well, with regard to the traffic count situation, I think that, first of all, there was a complete traffic count done when Target was involved in this, and I mean the whole kit and caboodle and whatever. Since that time, I'm not aware of any problems that have existed. I've certainly never heard of any, and I think if they were documented problems with that area, we would have heard about it newsworthy or otherwise. It seems to me that if we're talking about what's going to happen down the road, there isn't anything right now that's going to dramatically change what's going on there now, and a traffic count per se, I don't think is going to accomplish anything at this very moment, further exacerbated by the fact that there's work being done, as you well know, on the connector now, with all kinds of activity in and out and construction work and whichever, which I think would skew any such count. So my client is more than willing, once things get up and going, if traffic appears to be a problem, and we'll work with the DPD on it, and there needs to be some adjustment, sure, we'll get involved in taking care of that.
Because I think a lot of times what they do is indicated they could just adjust the light.
Well, I understand
the
that.
light.
But even at this point now, I'm not sure it's easy to do that with the basic raw resources and information that are there now.
And if you did the traffic report now, it could differ from what happens once the buildings get established.
Right.
Right, thank you, Counselor. I have no other questions. I think you covered the checklist pretty well. I mean, all the things that we've given to us.
And I think that's it for us for now, for the proponent, Mr. Chairman, but any one of the three of us are available for any questions the board has in the future, and we appreciate the opportunity.
At this point in time, would anybody like to make any comments for or against, or just make comments in general in regards to the site plan for Plain Street? Anybody want to be heard on that matter?
Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board, for the record, my name is Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. Wish to be recorded in favor of this project. It's an excellent project. It fits in the neighborhood character with the master plan, and it would really enliven that whole area. Because right now, you do have just Target, and you have Middle Building, which has Chuck E. Cheese, the China Buffet, and a couple of other stores. And this would really make that whole plaza a more lively activity area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Anyone else like to speak in regards to this project? Anyone want to speak in regards to the project? For or against, or just comments? Anyone else like to speak? Hearing none, at this point in time, does planning development have any comments further to add in regards to the presentation and about the comments that were commented in regards to your comments?
It was pretty thorough, as you noted. I don't have any comments at this point, but if the board has any questions, I'm happy to.
Thank you, I appreciate
best I
that.
can.
At this point in time, does the board have any questions or comments? Sure, we'll start with Mr. Lockhart, if we could.
Just from a site plan standpoint, I'm curious, your 4,700 square foot building, you put it right down in the middle of the parking lot. Is there some reason that it goes there? I mean, it seems to me, you know, it's right in the middle of all the traffic, and I'm just curious of your thinking as to why that should go there. And is there an alternative?
It was dictated in large part by Target. We purchased 12, 13 acres from Target, and that was part of the negotiation where we could locate it. And we tried to locate it, and I think we did locate it, for the most part, where the parking was the greatest, so as not to impact the shallower parking fields elsewhere on the site.
Okay. One other thing on the memo from Lisa DeMayo dated May 17th, you had referenced the location of dewatering and discharge to be shown on plans. Is your intent to put that on a plan and to get it approved by that department, or what? Just some clarification there.
As I mentioned, typically what would happen is when a contractor comes on board, such a complex stormwater project, they would submit a, they would devise a dewatering program that would work with the phasing of construction. We wouldn't necessarily provide that on the approved plans because, as I mentioned, it very much works in concert with what's going on for the phases of construction.
Oh, I understand that, but your intent is to submit something to her for review?
I would,
At some point in time?
I would assume, yeah, we certainly could do. Yeah, exactly, we could certainly,
Yeah,
that would be a
okay.
condition of
Pretty
the
simple.
construction.
I just want
Sure,
to
right.
have that clarification. I don't have any other questions. I think it's a good project. Certainly, the plaza could use some investment, upgrade what's there now, and, you know, I wish you luck. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mitch. Anyone else have any comments, questions? Mr. Gentleman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a couple questions. Firstly, the ownership, Target is maintaining ownership of half the plaza, and you are maintaining ownership of the other part of the plaza, right? Right. And the access road, is that owned by Target, or how's that work?
It's a good question. I'm trying to remember the plan in my head. Did you show it on there? The access road up to a point, let's start at the traffic signal. At the traffic signal coming in to a point is owned by Target and maintained by Target, and then wherever the property line is beyond that is maintained by RB Lowell LLC. There is an operation easement agreement between the two property owners, being Target and RB Lowell, which dictates the who does what and how the property is maintained, and sets minimum standards of maintenance for each of us to implement.
I see. So there's some kind of arrangement, legal arrangement that allows your customers to use the Target roadway, and
It's about 85 pages thick.
okay, I don't need to see it. It's fine. I trust you. Okay.
And if you
since-
need, if you want a copy, I'll give it to you, and it'll
Okay.
put you to sleep.
That's okay. The City of Lowell recycling traffic gets enough at my house as it is. Since we're on the traffic, I agree with the chairman. I think that signalization is actually pretty good. You know, I think I've not noticed any issues there, and it was well done when the Target moved in. But I assume you'd be willing to, once your plaza is 100% full and the traffic is, people are just streaming off the connector to get in there, you'll be willing to do some type of traffic counts to, in an effort to support changes to the signalization if necessary?
Yes, if the city asks us to do a traffic count after post-construction, we would be willing to do a traffic count.
Okay, cool, thank you. And could you put up the chart with the landscaping on it for a minute? The one that had the green islands, yeah. So all of those green spots, I assume, indicate landscaping islands.
Yeah.
I think so. You can just hit the
Push
button.
the green
there.
button.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, not to be confused, though, some of these are already previously planted. We would be providing new green space around here. And again, as I mentioned, on the revised plan, although not colored, we do have provisions for additional landscape around this area, so.
Okay. Do you have a percentage of the total asphalt space that's dedicated to landscaping?
Yes, we do. I believe the interior landscape is 5%. I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 7.5 or 8%.
Okay, great. No, I like the way it's laid out. I think having that island on each end of the parking aisles not only makes it look better, but it also provides for lanes, traffic lanes in the lot, so people aren't just like driving anywhere they want. See, I think I have one more thing I wanted to ask you. I guess that's it. That's good. I think this looks like a good project. Oh, I know what it was. On the back side, you're adding new parking on the back side, behind the Lincoln School there. That traffic lane, does that go through behind, if I'm driving and I go around to the left of the building and continue all the way around, does that dead end there, or does that continue through?
No, it in fact continues all the way along the back, all the way out to Target and
Okay.
around.
Great. All right, that's it. Thanks.
Right now, that does not continue through at all, and that's why we're doing, partly why we're doing what we're doing, so you can get full circulation around the
Right.
building.
Right, the proposed condition, I apologize, the proposed condition would indicate, would show that this does continue completely around.
Perfect. And the only other thing I would say is, since you've been able to have such stellar results from the Yankees in the past couple, we can
Keep
do
up the good
anything
work.
about the rest of the season as a condition, you know, can we see what you can do in that regard?
I will give it my best effort.
All right, that's all I ask.
It's a hard-nosed Yankee fan, I'm afraid. But we'll convert him.
Mr. Fischett, any questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly the petitioner made it my job easier here this evening. I think every concern that was addressed from the various departments, and obviously turning the building around, and that facilitated any concerns that were expressed by DPD. I guess the only comment I would have is obviously the plant material, and I was looking at what was there, and I'm assuming that there'll be a final landscape design. Just so I'm assuming you're not going to deviate too far from what's there. I suspect it'll be in keeping with the rest of the plaza. But
Yeah, there is in fact a landscape plan that was submitted with the package.
with the building turning around and
Oh, yeah,
everything
that-
changing around on that,
Right,
yeah.
there's actually additional areas
Yeah.
provided, and of course, it'll be planted in accordance with the Lowell standards.
'Cause if I'm correct, we did not receive that revised plan that you just showed here.
No, we just prepared that several days ago in
Correct.
response to the comments.
Correct, okay, and that's just, again, it looks fine, and it appears to address all the concerns here. I would ask Aaron, did DPD have an opportunity to look at what was presented here this evening?
The revised plans? No,
Yeah,
not
no.
tonight, but we could, the board has the ability to add conditions to approval that they submit that addresses the comment sheet.
That would be my only thought on that, so. Other than that, I applaud you. I think it's a very encouraging thing to see at this juncture in the economy, and certainly wish you well with the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fischett. Attorney Claremont?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very nice looking project, and congratulate you in advance. Just to follow up on some of the comments, in the letter that you submitted dated May 21, you proposed, I guess, some resolutions to some of the comments that were submitted. And I just want to, there's some additional things mentioned tonight. I just want to make sure I have them correct. Your comment number 6 was about the particle separator, and that you've agreed that you will install a particle separator. Is that correct? Okay. And you indicate, in your opinion, a driveway permit is not required, but if it's determined that one is needed, you will provide that, correct? Okay. And as far as the location of dewatering that was set forth by the city engineer, that is something that you'll provide to the city engineer later, once those plans become finalized and formalized. And the trip generation would be held off until after the project is occupied in full. Okay, I think,
Yes. Based on a request by the city on the traffic.
well, I think that it may be a condition that once the project is occupied, that a trip generation analysis be undertaken to determine if any changes are necessary in the signal. It's just my thought on that. But that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I basically have no comments. I mean, I believe they responded very well to comments as well that was given to them by the city departments and the questions issued this evening. So I have no questions at this point in time. What's the request of the board?
Chairman,
Chairman, I'll make a motion for approval, site plan approval with the condition that the applicant work with DPD on traffic control at a point when the plaza is fully occupied.
Any other conditions, or we have them?
That's all
One other thought on that the dewatering plans would be submitted to the city engineer for approval when they are ready, and that they will comply with the comments that were set forth on the letter dated May 21st, addressed to the planning and development.
And if I may add to the maker of the motion, is the review of DPD of the landscape plan as submitted with the amended positioning of the building and the amended landscape design.
Yeah, with those additions.
Those accepted, okay. So we do have a motion.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And I did have one other question.
Sure.
For the applicant with regard to the pedestrian traffic. There is shown on the schematic here a walkway between the Target building and your building. Is that an existing walkway? Is that a sidewalk, or is that a crosswalk, or what is that? Right there, you can see it on that one, yeah.
It's an existing, my recollection is that in conjunction with DPD, at the time, they asked that Target put that in so that there'd be a clear definition
Yes.
of joining the two.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion made and second with 4 conditions. All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none, that motion is approved. Does planning and development have the conditions, or they need those given back?
I can read through what I have here.
Sure.
I have motion, the original motion by the maker, or the original condition by the maker, that the applicant work with DPD on traffic when the plaza is totally occupied. Added by member Claremont that a dewatering plan is submitted to the city when available, and that they agree to abide by the conditions and the comments outlined in the letter addressed to DPD on May 21st, which includes the clarifications that you went through before the motion, and from member Frechette that submit to DPD for approval the landscape plan around the newly configured building.
So we have, the motion was made by Rich, I believe second by Mr. Jedman with those 4 conditions, correct? Okay, and it proves 5 in favor. Okay. Thank you very much. Good luck.
We thank you very much. We also thank the board for letting us get on early so we can send Mr. Hirsch on back to New York timely, and also thank Attorney Flood and his clients for deferring to us. And as always, Craig and Joe and Aaron, thank you.
You getting the feedback? So they're over here?
Must be that one? I don't know. The other one's open? No? Okay, moving along, we have back to public hearing on site plan review and special permit on 39 and 65 Perkins Street. This is a continuation, and also site plan review of 1 Perkins Street, which is continuation from a previous meeting. For 3965 Perkins Street, the matter was continued. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Riverfront Development, LLC, care of EA Fish Development. The existing parcels of 39 Perkins Street contain 4 single and multi-story masonry structures located on 35,401 square feet of land. The existing parcel at 65 Perkins Street contains 6,000 square feet, single-story brick building located on 12,751 square feet of land. The proposal concludes the redevelopment of the structure on 39 Perkins Street and creation of 2 new structures to create 30 dwelling units and 1 3,400 square foot retail space. There are 6 dwelling units proposed on 65 Perkins Street. For 39 Perkins Street, 38 parking spaces will be provided off of Lawrence Drive. 3 parking spaces will be provided off of Perkins Street, and 23 parking spaces will be located in a private parking garage on Perkins Street. For 65 Perkins Street, 6 parking spaces will be located off of Lawrence Drive, and 6 spaces will be provided in the private parking area on Perkins Street. The applicant is seeking site plan review under section 11.4 and special permit under Article 12, Table of Uses, the City of Lowell. The parcel is located in institutional zone district. And for site plan review, 1 Perkins Street was a continuation. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by 1 Perkins Street LLC, care of Myra Development LLC. The existing parcel contains 4,378 square feet of land in one vacant three-story building with a footprint of approximately 2,000 square feet. The proposal includes the redevelopment of the vacant building into 6,000 square feet of commercial land and creation of 6 parking spaces. 9 additional spaces will be located in the private parking area in Perkins Street. The applicant is seeking site plan review under section 11.4 of the City of Lowell zoning code. The parcel is located in industrial zoning district. We did have the public hearing, and the matter was continued, and it was open for a public hearing to continue to tonight, well, to the last meeting, then requested to tonight because we had one member who couldn't make it for personal reasons. We did go through the public hearing. Mr. Flood addressed the questions, and Mr. Walsh, I believe, also spoke, and some other people spoke on the project. And then at that point in time, there was a question by one of the board members if we get determination on if we could use double counts of parking on 2 different locations. We also had a question, and I believe there was a traffic count done on 2 different dates by our plan and development staff, and the matter was put over to get those questions back to us, and I believe we have received both of those comments to us in writing, so this matter is continuation to follow up on those questions. Saying that, I'll turn it back to Mr. Flood at this point in time. I know the presentation was done.
Mr. Chairman,
Go.
members of the board, James Flood, 549 Rogers Street, representing the developers and those 2 that you mentioned. I think that the issue of the parking was raised by Mr. Gendron, and he was right, that we can't double use them. So I then filed a request for a special permit for a reduction of the parking, and I think if we could hear that one now, that might answer some of the questions on the other one.
Okay, I'll read that into record too then.
Yeah.
So this is in before us for the first time.
Right.
This is a special permit at 21-39 Perkins Street. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Perkins Place LLC seeking a special permit to reduce parking requirement by 30%, or 110 spaces. The current building, totaling 220,000 square feet, consists of 183 apartments and currently have parking requirements, 366 spaces, meet with the facilities located at 40 Perkins Street. The lots total approximately 55,558 square feet of land. The subject property is located in institutionalized zone and requires special permit review by the planning board under section 6.167 of the zoning ordinance.
If I could, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. And I know we had Mr. Thomas from our department go twice, and he gave us notes to the parking counts that he did on 2 separate occasions that are in our packet for tonight. Continuation of 2 public hearings and 1 new public hearing.
As the notice stated, the property at 21-39 Perkins Street does contain 183 apartment units, and at the present time, the building is 97% occupied. We're requesting a special permit to reduce the parking requirements, which when it was approved, it was 366 spaces, and we're asking to reduce it not by 50%, but by 30%, which would reduce the requirement from 366 to 256. This is under section 6.167 of the zoning ordinance, which provides that residential parking requirements in an institutional zone may be reduced by as much as 50% if a publicly owned parking facility is located within 400 feet of the entrance to the use, if the planning board finds that the public parking facility will accommodate parking demand of the project. I've passed out the assessor's map, which shows the location of 39 Perkins Street, and where I put the X is a property which is presently owned by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and has a parking lot called the Pit. I think it's basically used a lot for the spinners. As Mr. Walsh, unfortunately, he cannot be with us tonight. He had some surgery, major surgery last week, and he's still recuperating. But as he explained at the last meaning considerable amount of the spaces in the parking garage remain unused. And on the application, we submitted a schedule of the parking usage by way of parking, by the cards, from August 2010 to March of 2012. And as I stated, the building is 97% occupied, and based on the past cards issued, there's still 129 spaces available. DPD has also conducted an independent inspection, and on both occasions, I think there were a minimum of 180 spaces available. The building at 39 is located within the 400 feet of that 99 Perkins Street site. And I think, as the board knows, there are plenty of other public parking facilities close by. I understand Mr. Gendron's concern, but I think this provision could be used in this situation. I'd be more than willing, and I read Eric Slagle's comments, to place a condition that every 6 months we will provide you with the breakdown of the cards issued by our tenants. And if we need additional spaces, we'll be glad to rent them from the city or do anything like that. But they're vacant now. There is this provision in the zoning, and I think it would be helpful to us. It would be helpful to the people at the Renaissance on the river to provide some parking for them. And if we came in every 6 months or every year, whatever this board wants, with a breakdown, and that's a condition because it is a special permit, we'll be glad to go out and rent the other spaces from the city. I think that's the purpose of this request.
Do you have anybody else on behalf
I
of the
don't have,
applicant
no,
who wants to
Mr.
speak?
Walsh,
Okay.
like I said, is
Okay, I understand that.
recuperating and.
Okay. And does anybody else here present this evening like to speak in regards to the proposals on Perkins Street?
Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board, for the record again, my name is Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. And I wish to be recorded in favor of all three of these proposals: the site plan review, special permit for 39 and 65 Perkins Street, which I think would be a great boon to the city, as well as the special permit on the parking spaces regarding 21 and 39 Perkins Street. And I don't know if you're gonna hold off on the 1 Perkins Street until the next one, but I want to be recorded in favor of that as well. All three will be in the neighborhood character as part of the master plan for the city of Lowell, and I urge that the planning board approve this with whatever conditions the board sees fit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Anybody else like to speak on this project? For or against, or any comments? Anybody else want to speak in regards to Perkins Street? Anyone else want to speak? Hearing none, at this point in time, I'll turn it over to Division Plan Development. Do you have any comments in regards to the proposal?
Two comment memos have been put forward to the board, and I'm more than willing to provide a response to those as needed by your comments and concerns.
Okay, thank you. Aaron, any questions, any concerns? No? Okay. At this point in time, any of the board members have any questions? Mr. Gentleman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank the applicant for their patience with us on this matter, and offer our best wishes to Mr. Walsh. I hope that he's doing well. So I think that this is a good project, and what is completed down there looks great. This is a really positive section of downtown, I think, and we all want to see it be successful. The concern was on the parking, and that I think is really important in this particular section of the city, because we have the spinners there, and that's a parking nightmare sometimes. We have the university, and we have other businesses around there that often cause parking to fill up. However, I do think your proposal for the special permit is a good idea, especially if we can add the condition that you mentioned. We had some correspondence from the city attorney, and he suggested a condition here that I think would make sense, that would indeed ask the applicant to provide us a count of available parking in the garage on a 6-month basis, I think would be fine. Go ahead.
The only thing I'd like to point out, Steve, is that could we provide, I mean, we can give you a full count, because we might rent some to the Renaissance, you know.
Sure.
But I'd like to be able to provide you what our building requires and how many of those buildings are being used, so you'll know that there's these additional spaces open. Now, if they're open, we want to rent them to the Renaissance, or we use them for these buildings. But I think that would make more sense.
So you're saying that,
The numbers that we need for our building.
so your intention is,
We'll give you both, but
so your intention is to, if you have extra parking in there, you'll rent them out to other folks. But you're asking if the condition can be, you'll give us a count of what your residents are requiring.
Right.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable. I don't think it's your responsibility to provide the parking for the Renaissance. So, although I think it's a good thing that you do.
well, I think
if
it's a
available.
win-win, right?
So I think the condition would be that we get that count every 6 months. And if your facility exceeds the parking available, either the spaces you're providing on the ground and in the lot, that you'll either reach out and rent from the city or expand your parking.
I think we'd rent from the city, because I think.
Yeah, the only reason I would want that additional item in there is that who knows
It might happen.
who knows what happens with the city parking in the future, if those spaces will be available to lease. And the applicant did say at the last meeting that the garage was built such that it could be expanded. So I think that as long as you're willing to accommodate the condition as the attorney suggested it here in this memo, then I think that makes sense.
I think that's only reasonable, so you people will know. I mean, I think they want to do the right thing for the city. They've done the right thing. They built the garage, but I think they'd like to use them if they possibly can.
Agreed. Agreed. So, Craig, I think that if we could take this, so I would, Mr. Chairman, if it's appropriate now, move approval on all three of these motions. Should we take them one at a time?
Just to clarify, Mr. Gentleman, on the language that you're suggesting for the parking, it's the language from Eric Slagle, applicant shall track and record overnight usage of the parking facility, et cetera? And somewhere in there, there's a space in the event there's an issue that they would execute a lease for X number of spaces in the City of Lowell parking garage. Is that something we need to complete?
I would say, it would be enough to comply with the zoning code. So I would say, probably, 100 spaces makes sense there.
Or execute a lease for enough space to comply with the zoning code?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, in absence of the special permit. Obviously, the special permit reduces the requirement, but, I would say that if the garage is exceeded, if the capacity of the garage is exceeded by the tenant's customers, or by the tenant's residents.
Residents in that
Residents, well, I think it's residents and there's also gonna be businesses in there that will require parking, right? So it's,
But I think the parking requirement on 21 to 39 is for the residences only. And we're asking for reduction from that requirement from the 366 down to 256. So I think if we track the parking of the residences, we'll know how many are left over that we can use for our development and for Renaissance on the river. And we'll provide you with that information.
but I think you are responsible to provide parking for the businesses that are in your facility.
It's all residential in those two mill buildings.
There's a commercial
That's
development.
proposed, yes. We would, but what I'm saying is we're reducing the parking requirement for our residential use right now in those two buildings. That's what the special permit is asking. So by reducing it from 366 to 256, that leaves another 110 spaces available, which we can rent, which we will use to satisfy our parking requirements, plus additional can be rented to Renaissance. But I think if that stays constant, for every 6 months, our residences, and there's always 110 spaces available, then we don't have a problem. But I think you want to just track our residences to see how many spaces are available on a month-to-month basis. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I don't think it makes sense, I don't think it's necessary for you to consider the Renaissance parking when you're fulfilling your requirement to the city with regard to parking. But I do think it's your responsibility to meet the requirements of the residents and the businesses that are in this development.
I agree with you, but let's say at a later date, the apartments use 350 units. Those ones for our new development, we're going to have to enter a lease with the city for. See, what I'm saying is, what we're asking is to reduction of what has previously been approved, the 366 down to 256. And those spaces will be available. And if we have a bunch of residents that want 2 spaces, then that's going to reduce the number as we go forward. I mean, does that make sense?
So I guess I'm looking for guidance from the DPD on this as to, I think in general, we agree. I just think that we need a condition on it that will say if at some point the applicant, exceeds the spaces available to him in the ground parking and in the garage that he's got, that this condition will kick in and will require him to go lease spaces or provide additional parking.
Yeah, I think that there are two competing elements here. The one piece is that this special permit is for the residential building, and I think that's part of Mr. Flood's concern with attaching other elements of this application to the other development on site. That said, there are required parking spaces to meet your minimum requirement for the additional redevelopment proposed at 38 spaces minimum to ensure parking compliance for the proposed work. Now, what the memo from Mr. Slagle says is, in particular, the peak parking will likely be overnight, because that's for when the residential tenants, clients, customers, anyone involved with the residential uses will be on the site. Now, the commercial uses will fall under a variety of shared parking opportunities during the day largely. So the opportunity to track the parking during the day at any point would pick up a lot of the commercial traffic. To get around this in general, if you look at the day versus night split, to simply, again, follow what Mr. Slagle has outlined and do a night count related to this garage, that would feature predominantly the residential, the residents of these developments who are using this space. Again, there may, for some reason, be some of the additional spaces taken up by the commercial redevelopment, but principally, this garage was built for zoning compliance with this residential development.
Correct.
So the other elements that are considered under this special permit relate to this residential, the residential redevelopment. Now, as you say, if the garage is too full for their use, that will occur during the evening, and that would be the time that the count should occur to take into account, into consideration whether or not there is ample provision for the residents. I think I started down the track of making that clear and made it more complicated. Again, there's the residents, the issue of the special permit for this residential redevelopment, and with that in consideration, the best way, and I agree with Attorney Slagle, to determine that the provision is being met outside of the legal requirement, which is what the special permit is about in general, the actual facility requirement would be a night count. Now, it'd be regardless of the commercial or residential users. The night count would be predominantly residential users anyway. There may be some mix with the commercial use, but that would be a condition. And again, and Attorney Slagle makes very clear, you have a lot of latitude on a special permit to require conditions that you see fit as are reasonable for the development. So for this, if you require a nighttime count, which will largely be residential and fit with this character, but may pick up some of the other commercial development, that would, I think, best determine whether there was a sufficient space in the garage to meet the need.
I think the way I look at it, Steve, is that right now we'd have 110 spaces available. 38 of those spaces could be used for the new development. But 6 months down the road, if we don't have that 110 and we only have 20, because the residents in our building are taking advantage of those parking spaces, which originally were granted to that building, then we'd have to go out and rent spaces. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think so, but what I'd like to do is to propose I'll make a motion that we approve each of these proposals, including the special permit, with the condition as written by the attorney, which includes a night count, and as Craig said, that would kind of eliminate the commercial usage of the building. So if that is exceeded, then it will be the applicant's responsibility to go out and either hire, and I'll say 100 spaces, because I think that would bring them in compliance with the zoning code as we've got it, either from the city of Lowell or expand their garage. Go exactly as written by the attorney, with 100 spaces written in each.
I don't know where the 100 comes from. Where does that come from?
Well, I think you're 100 spaces short, roughly, of
Yeah.
the initial zoning code.
We are, but let's say that if all the residents use those spaces, we're only 38 short. Because that's what we are on the new development. We're not 100
So
short.
if you're only 38 short, then you don't have to worry about
That's why I don't
expanding
think you should put a number in there.
That's why you don't think what?
You should put a number in there, because if everyone in that building wanted 2 spaces, we have 370, they require 366. So say we used up all 366s. Then we'd have to go out, I think, with 38 short on the new development and rent 38 spaces.
Could I make a suggestion? I mean, without trying to make it more difficult. I mean, the suggestion by Mr. Slagle, as I see it, says, if your garage is 95% or more occupied for a period of 6 months, you need to go out and get some more spaces. We understand that. We don't know how many spaces we would need. To pick a number might be problematic, because as you say, we might need 38, we may need 100, we don't know. But if we took that language from Mr. Slagle and said that if it averaged 95% of overnight capacity for a period of 6 months, then the matter will come back before this planning board to determine expansion of the parking to an appropriate number. And then at that point, we can have counts and we can figure out what the proper number would
We
be.
know for sure then. That's fine.
I like that idea. Let's do that.
So we do have a motion by Mr. Chairman. Do any of the board members have any comments, discussion, before we go further on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, the only item I might add as far as a motion would be I believe the Historic Board has approved this project already.
Historic did last
And so
Monday.
may
right?
potentially incorporate the conditions of that approval to
There
harmonize the permits.
were a couple of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We have 2 historic permits that we approved on May 14th. One for 1 Perkins Street and the other for the other part of the project there, which is 39 and 65 Perkins Street. And the only condition, well, there's actually 9 conditions on the first one, most of which are pretty standard conditions. The one condition that we really would like to emphasize is the materials on the commercial space. We want to see what they
Yeah,
are.
they're coming back, they told me.
Yeah, they're
that.
coming back.
on
but
that. yeah.
Historic permits were issued for both projects.
And I was just going to suggest, though, looking back, I know we didn't conclude our hearing the last time around. There were a couple of suggested conditions I had written down. One was historic board review, which has been completed, but subject to the memo of the city engineer dated March 19th of 2012, that the applicant continue to work with DPD regarding the landscaping, and that snow be removed from the site if necessary. Those were 3 items I had written down during the original public hearing.
I think we also have to work with historic on the landscaping too.
Yes.
Isn't that correct, Rich?
Yeah, I'm sure that's on
Yeah.
there.
I would second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
And I'll accept the
Okay.
suggested
So,
additional conditions.
so basically, let me break it down, because on the first matter, we need a site plan and a special permit. So on the first part, we have a motion by Mr. Genman, which addresses the parking in regards to the site plan, and with the other conditions added, the city engineer memo 31912, work with DPD for landscaping, and also work with the historic board. Those correct with the extra conditions? So there's a motion by Mr. Genman with 4 conditions. Anyone want to, in regards to the site plan review? Do we have a second on that matter?
I'll second.
Motion's made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none. So the site plan review for 3965 Perkins Street has been approved. Now we need a motion for the special permit on 3965 Perkins Street. I believe Mr. Jemmons said he made a motion on that for the special permit.
To approve with the same conditions.
With the same 4 conditions, which would be the city engineer memo dated 3/19/12, work with DPD for the landscaping, and work with the historic board, and also the other condition was with the parking.
Second that.
Just for the parking condition, it may seem most appropriate for, again, future enforcement, that that's only tied to that specific special permit for 21 and 39 Perkins Street. I know there's lots of votes happening right now,
Okay.
so we're all clear on that.
So we only, do we need it? We only need for the special permit on 2139 Perkins Street? We need that, we're gonna need a special permit on that to reduce the parking.
Yes.
But do we need it on 39 and 65 as well, right? But we don't need it,
That's actually a special permit just for the number of units. That's
Okay.
related to the number of residential
Okay.
units. Again, as a special permit
Gotcha.
granting authority, you have wide latitude as to how the conditions are included. But that one in particular for enforcement would seemingly be most appropriate only with the final special permit decision, while the rest of the conditions would apply to the entire site.
okay. So for the special permit on Perkins Street, do we need the parking permit, special permit? No.
No, it's a special permit for the number of residential uses,
Okay.
residential units.
Okay.
For the one for
Okay. So we could,
39 and 65.
so do you want to make the motion to approve not counting the parking count on that, and just with the 4 conditions, with the engineer, DPD, and the historic board?
Yeah, I guess Craig's saying that we only need the parking condition on the special permit relative to reducing the parking requirement.
So your motion will be amended without that part, but with the other conditions from the city engineer memo and DPD landscaping and the historic board approval?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion's made. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none, that motion carries for the special permit. That's allowed. Okay, now we have a site plan review on Perkins Street. And a motion was made by Mr. Genman to approve that. We don't need the parking special permit, so just be with the other conditions as indicated, which would be the city engineer, the landscaping, and the historic board approval.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none, that motion passes. Now we have special permit on 2139 Perkins Street, and this will be a special permit to reduce the parking spaces. And that was a motion by Mr. Genman to allow parking spaces. So we don't need the site plan approval on that, just a special permit on that, because the site plan has already been approved. So this would just be the special permit in regards to the parking, which was mentioned by Mr. Genman for, to report back to us if every 6 months, if it gets to 95% overnight capacity, it would come back for the board for determination of how many parking spaces would need to be leased in the city parking garage, correct? So that motion has been made by Mr. Genman, and this is a special permit, so it needs 4 votes. Do we have a second on that matter? Okay, second by Mr. Lockhart. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, chair votes yes. In opposition? Hearing none, that matter carries.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just say that the motion is to return to us to determine how many additional parking spaces will be required.
Right, so we'll come back to us 6 months and come back.
Doesn't necessarily have to be leased from the city. It could be
Okay.
obtained through other means.
Oh, yeah, okay, so either parking garage or whether they have to add to facility, okay?
Just,
How they pick up the
if
parking.
they hit that 95% over the 6-month period, they need to come back to us to determine how many additional parking spaces will be required. And at that time, we can examine whatever evidence you have to determine how to go forward.
Do you have anything left on Perkins
We're
Street?
making it confusing. Thank you very much. I think you're going to find it's a great project.
Is there any other thing on Perkins Street we missed?
But that finishes up that whole area, and I
Okay.
think it's going to be a great.
Okay. Moving along, Perkins Street is done. Let me just, while we're doing that, just, the next matter will be 619 Lakeview Ave. Just give us a couple of minutes to get our plans in order. Okay, moving along, the next matter is for a special permit on 619 Lakeview Ave. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Manuel Silveria et al. Seeking a special permit to reduce required frontage from 70 feet to 60 feet at 619 Lakeview Ave. There are currently 2 dwellings on Lakeview Ave and a shed on Carolyn Street on a parcel with 19,137 square feet of land. The proposal will create 2 lots on Lakeview Ave, one for each dwelling that conform to City of Lowell ordinance dimensional requirements. After minor demolition, except for the required frontage in one new conforming lot on Carolyn Street. Each lot will contain between 5,656 and 7,014 square feet of land. The applicant proposes to remove the existing 4 parking spaces and create 6 new parking spaces. The subject property is located in the traditional multifamily and the traditional single-family zoning district and requires special permit review with the planning board under section 5.117 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. May we hear the case from the applicant, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, James Flood, 549 Roger Street, Lowell, representing Manny and Arthur Silveria, who are with me here tonight. They're the owners of the property. As the notice stated, the lot contains 19,137 square feet, according to the records in the city assessor's office. Its split zone portion is TSF, traditional single family, which is the portion on the Carolyn Street side, and TMF, which is on the Lakeview Avenue side. At the present time, it contains 2 single-family homes. They're both fronting on Lakeview Avenue, and a shed which fronts on Carolyn Street. My clients are desirous of dividing it into 3 lots, 2 to front on Lakeview Avenue, 1 on Carolyn Street. I've met on a couple of occasions with Aaron Clausen of DPD to discuss this matter, and he suggested that I present the whole plan to the planning board. Lot 1, which is the lot for the proposed single-family zone, would contain 7,014 square feet, and it meets all dimensional requirements of the City of Lowell zoning ordinance. Lot 2, the rear portion of the existing property, which consists of a mudroom and an old barn, will be removed. And that lot is 5,656 square feet. And Lot 3 would be the other single-family home, which consists of 6,270 square feet. All the homes would be single-family. And all the lots contain the minimum square footage required in their respective zones. I've passed out a copy of the 1936 Atlas, and you can see that all 3 structures that are on the site today were there in 1936. Under Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 81L, I think he would probably have the right to divide it into 3 lots by an A&R plan, but as discussed with Aaron, he thought it'd be best we brought it into the board to discuss. He's willing to work with the city in the development of this project and would like to proceed. We've reviewed the comments, and I understand the comments that staff made about the building. I've submitted a new plan that shows the facade of the building, which seems to conform with the neighborhood based on the houses that I saw today. We will not, however, have a dormer in the back, and it will not have a garage under, but it would basically be the front of that building. Parcel, the building on Lot 2 will stay as shown on the plan. I said the back portion will be removed. And Lot 3, there was some discussion about the driveway. And we are more than willing to move it over. And I don't know whether something like this might work. If we had 2 curb cuts, one to come in, have them park in the rear, and one to go out. But we're more than willing to move it closer to 603 and more than willing to cut the entrance to 619. So you'd have 20 feet in there so you could park a car on the street. But I didn't know whether a design like this would work with the planning board. We'd be glad to work with staff as far as parking is concerned. But that's what we would like to do. As far as the trees concerned, that would have to come down, but we were willing to plant trees in accordance with the requests of the planning department. But, I mean, I think that's basically what the project involves, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Flood, I think there was a question on Carolyn Street, that the fire hydrant's right in the middle of the way.
Oh, I forgot, yeah, we will reload, we'll put the house on the other side, so it won't interfere with the driveway.
So the fire hydrant will stay and you'll shift the house, or?
Yeah, we'll shift the house.
Okay.
Fire hydrant will be in front of the house, not in front of the driveway.
So the other option is what, you could shift the fire hydrant if need be? That would be
I
the other
think to
option?
shift the fire hydrant would be a big job. That involves the city.
Yeah.
I think that's a big job.
Actually, I did ask Aaron just a little bit about that earlier today, about what the process of that would be. I was reading my things. And Aaron, could you just comment on that, what the process would be actually if the fire hydrant had to be moved?
Yeah, so there's probably two options. One is to actually move the fire hydrant, which would take a street opening permit to bring in a new water line to service the new hydrant, or relocate the drive lane, whichever. Both of those would likely need a street opening permit from the city engineer. And through that process, there's an ability to make sure that the fire department, city engineer, water department will be able to weigh in and to make sure that all the services are adequate for new.
As far as the Carolyn Street pieces, there are 2 curb cuts there right now. So if we move it over, there won't be a problem to the other side.
There's 2 curb cuts on Carolyn Street now?
Right? Right. Andy's here.
Yeah. I mean, they're not very well pronounced, 'cause I know I was sitting up there and looking at it, but
What?
you really can't see them that well.
No, 'cause there's a fence there too.
Right, 'cause I saw the
There's a
fence,
there
and I
too,
saw the hydrant when I sat there and looked at it, and I'm like,
But there are 2 curb cuts.
okay, right. Because with the fences, must be both, one to each side? Okay, right, okay. Okay. Mr. Flood, does anybody else want to speak on this project on behalf of the applicant before we turn it over to the public?
I couldn't hear you, Tom.
Does anybody else want to speak on behalf of the applicant?
No, guess we're all set.
Okay. Okay, at this point in time, I'll turn it over to the public. Anybody here like to, well, first of all, I do have a letter that was presented to us tonight. It was sent to Joe from our planning staff. Property located at 619 Lakeview and Carolyn Street, from the abutter at 48 Carolyn Street. I attended the last meeting, which was postponed. I cannot attend the next meeting. The building located on abutting property line to be raised, exposing my house to the crazy driver speeding into Lakeview Ave property in the middle of the night, 4:30 a.m. Will the fence replace it? Already too much noise late in the night from property on Lakeview Ave. I do not intend to block the changes. I just need to understand what they intend to do for the noise in the future from 619 Lakeview Ave and new property. Thank you for your consideration on this matter. And how much, it's from Judy, but didn't say the last name on that. Okay. What's your last name? Okay. Oh, I apologize. On top of the email. Okay. At this point in time, anybody from the public like to speak in regards to this project? For or against, or any comments? Anyone from the public want to speak? Anyone want to speak in favor or against? Nobody wants to speak? Okay. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to any questions we have from the planning board, or does planning staff have any questions, concerns about this that they want to raise for the board? I know we spoke about the hydrant already.
Yeah, there were some comments laid out in the memo dated May 2nd. It's been some time now, but one of the principal ones was really about the character of the building. Again, this is a special permit for a frontage reduction for the 2 reconfigured lots, and as a part of that process, this came through the concern about buildings going into existing established neighborhoods, and so that we really wanted to provide an opportunity for a little bit of design review for the board. So if you have any questions to that extent, we can answer them to the best of our ability.
Okay. Thank you, Craig.
To that end, Mr. Chairman, if I may, to what Craig mentioned, and actually even a petitioner can go to the City of Lowell's website under the planning board. We actually have the residential development guidelines for traditional neighborhoods. So if you go in there, you can actually pull out the designs that the city would prefer to see in those types of neighborhoods. And I think it actually incorporates the comments that DPD staff had relative to the gable end, and I like this solution compared to the cape that was originally submitted. I think obviously the benefit that this affords us as a board is the ability to require a certain architectural look of the home. And I think this puts it well. New construction should be sensitive to the existing architectural style of the neighborhood, though it does not need to be a reproduction of a historical neighborhood. So again, taking into account certain elements of the designs of the buildings that surround the site are well within the purview of the board in this particular case. I do have a question, Attorney Flood, if you could pull out your diagram on your horseshoe driveway. I'm just trying to, is that for the existing buildings on Lawrence?
603, right.
On Lawrence
603.
Street?
That's the first building coming up.
And is there room on the other side? I'm trying to, because I know the traffic engineer had comments relative to having two driveways side by side, and what I'm asking is that an attempt to address that, or?
Well, this is an attempt to address the parking in the rear, so it won't be backing out and into each other, so. I think the problem with that site is there's a telephone pole there that makes a new driveway coming in a little difficult. We can move it closer, but if we move it closer to the house, then we're gonna have to go further in the back with the two parking spaces. So this might be even better for the parking spaces if we designed it like that.
We're talking on Lakeview Ave, right? 603 Lakeview Ave?
Right.
And I'm not convinced even the alternative that was suggested here, leaving the one drive to service both homes, is something I'm really pleased with. But is that something that?
No, they don't want to, see, what they want to do is they're going to sell these houses as single-family homes. And that will take care of that noise situation, if there's a noise situation, because someone's going to come by and have some pride in their home. Right now, they're tenants. So a shared driveway is not.
And I did drive around there extensively yesterday, and I did spot, matter of fact, a few instances where driveways were side by side, not something that's very common, and obviously there can be some issues there. That's an intriguing solution. I don't know. I'd like to.
Well, it's just a thought. I think what they were trying to accomplish is to get 20 feet in between the two driveways, so a car could park on the street.
Right.
There'd be additional parking.
Sure.
I think was that, Craig, that the idea?
That was the intent of the comment, and
Yeah.
sometimes in plan, it appeared to work, but if there are other issues with a telephone pole, it becomes more complicated than during first review.
Right.
Manny thinks he can accomplish that.
Now, on Carolyn Street, there's no problem then flipping the driveway, though, so it's not in the intersection? Did I?
Yeah, that was the purpose. Eric said he didn't want it.
Right, to be in the intersection.
Involved with the intersection.
So that's not a problem?
That's not a problem at all, no.
Okay. For myself, I think I'd like to have a little bit more time to review that alternative to what's being suggested, the concerns of the traffic engineer.
Yeah, this is just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, I understand, yeah, and certainly would like to be honest with you, another opportunity to take a look at that site with something being offered in that manner.
I submitted that plan of the house because I thought that is more in conformance with the neighborhood than what was there. And the arches in the front are very similar.
Yeah. No, I think this is I think it's a vast improvement. And actually, if you go to the city's website and look at the designs, it incorporates the elements that we're looking for when you look at the existing home. So I certainly agree with that. But for myself, I think I'd want to, before I'd make a decision here this evening, I'd like to explore that a little bit more on the Lakeview Ave side. Thank you.
Any of the board members have any questions, comments? Rich, no? Attorney Claremont?
Not really. I would agree. I'd like to see that fleshed out a little more. That seems to be a better solution than what's proposed here. I have no objection to the reduction in the frontage as requested, but would like to see how the whole thing would play out on the plan.
Mr. Gentleman, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a couple of questions. The current dwellings, are they single-family now?
Right.
So they're all single-family, and they're all going to stay single-family. So why would you suggest that, the single-family would address the noise problem that the resident brought up? Because
They're single-family, but they're rental properties. And so the tenants don't have the pride in the property that an owner would be.
Sure.
Would have it, so that was why I said that.
And their intent is to sell them as
Sell them, right.
single-family, so it'll be an ownership thing. Yeah, that makes some sense. Craig or Aaron, Mr. Flood, Attorney Flood brought up the issue of, saying that it's likely that this could have been treated as an A&R based on the prior configuration of the lots. Do you guys agree with that, or what's your take?
Yeah,
on that?
there's an exemption through Mass General Law 81L for properties that had structures prior to 1964, I believe is the date. It might be 1860, but it's in that range somewhere. So there could have been an A&R endorsed under that provision. However, whether or not the two properties on Lakeview, or the proposed two properties on Lakeview, whether or not they would have the frontage according to the new frontage requirements, an amendment that basically extended all of them by 15 feet would be met was the question. So there could have been an A&R endorsed, but there would still need to be the special permit to reduce the frontage for the two properties because they are essentially no longer conforming. So what we had discussed, or Attorney Flood and I had discussed, pardon me, was to address this all as one process with the planning board so that you could review it from the front to the end and address any concerns early on, rather than have a plan subdivided, then come back to the special permit. It'd be less flexibility to address some of these minor details that right now I think are easily addressed, like the location of the driveway on either side of Canal Street, preserving on-street parking where possible. That's a lot easier to address at this stage than to go and get an A&R endorsed, find that there's some issues, and then have to go through a whole process again. So this way, it just packaged it together in a nice sequence.
Okay.
And like I said, they want to work with the city. They want to do the right thing for the city.
So I generally don't like to see us reducing our zoning requirements because I think they're already pretty relaxed, and this is another crowded neighborhood, and we don't want to. I'm against trying to create more congestion there. However, this does seem to be a unique case, and it does sound like an opportunity for us to take a kind of messy situation and clean it up a bit. So I'd be supportive of the concept, but I would agree with my colleagues that, I think we need to see a more detailed plan of the parking and maybe some better ideas of what exactly the construction would look like and so forth.
I just have a couple comments. I know when you go down Carolyn Street, basically all those houses in there are very small lots.
Right.
I mean, so I have no problem with it conforming to that area because they are small. You'd answer my question about the hydrant, how you could get around that, either move, then you have the curb cut, which I didn't notice the curb cut when I was first up there because of the fence. I think, what was... I know when I was up there looking at it, which was previous to the first meeting that was continued, I did notice the two houses. I did look, there is quite a bit of parking in the back. It's just a question of how you get to it, where you're coming together now. I know to the house to the left, There might be some more noise there, because there was a sign there that says "It's a boy" sign in the window, so you might be getting a little extra noise from that.
I couldn't hear you, Tom.
There was a sign on the door that said "It's a boy," so, so when I was up there on the house to the left, that had the sign and "It's a boy's," the name on the mailbox was the place where Santos is, so you might be hearing a little more noise from that house, but I don't know if the woman back here on Carolyn Street would hear that, but I think the main concern, I'd say, look at which way you feel the traffic flow would be the best coming in, instead of sharing the parking lot.
Would you like me to submit a couple of different scenarios on the parking? Would that satisfy the board?
Yeah, I mean, and then, maybe, and then send a copy to the traffic engineer and see which one seems to work the best.
And I think Manny did speak to that woman that was here last time.
Okay.
And showed her a picture of that new building, and she was very satisfied with it. She thought it would go there.
All right.
But you're right, those other lots are very small.
Yeah, when I went down that street,
like
it's a
4,000
tight
square
street, but they were all, very small. So looking at it, and looking at Lakeview, the lot's a little bigger, come around the back of it, Carolyn Street. They're, the neighborhood is not like you're putting something in there that doesn't fit, so. But so I don't know if you want us to continue the matter and come back with a design layout of the driveway. I don't know what your request, what your pleasure would be. You want us, come back with two different plans, and which type of driveway proposal you'd want?
Well, if we had a conditional approval, that'd be good. That would save
Okay, and then,
that.
all right, and then if we did the conditional approval, then obviously you would have to come back to us for the final approval of the layout.
Of the driveway, sure, and we'll submit different plans and you can pick it.
Sure, and then we could do is, if you got the conditional approval, with the conditional approval be to satisfy the layout of the parking requirement, and if we could put it on a future date on our board meeting, some night that you're present.
Right.
And we could just pick that up under old business and see which one is satisfactory to the, to the traffic engineer as well as the board members, as they might have more further comments. And then we could just incorporate it by reference
Well,
thereafter.
if I can get it in, I'll come back next time and,
Yeah.
and see if you approve it.
Okay, either that or,
I'd like to do that.
yeah, so, any board members have any questions or concerns about that?
Mr. Chairman, can we also get a, kind of a layout diagram of where the new house will be located, and maybe a more detailed architectural representation of what it will look? I know you gave us an example here.
That would be what the front would look like, the front of the house, basically.
Right, but it's got the gambrel on the back and everything, so
No dormer in the back.
the dormer on the back. But I'm wondering if you can give us a plan that would be a little bit more detailed, more exact plan of what you expect to do there.
And it's gonna change anyways on the lot, because it's a little bigger than the other one, so,
Okay.
yeah.
And to that point, because our approval, that's the purpose of this, we can approve the actual design of that house, so we definitely want to have that as part of our approval. Yeah.
So it's conditioned on not just the parking layout, but the design and layout of the lot and design of the house.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to put that in the form of a motion?
I will, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I will make the motion that we issue a conditional approval subject to the applicant submitting a satisfactory driveway and parking design for the lots on Lawrence Street, and for a final design, architectural design of the home to be built on Carolyn Street.
Any discussion on that, or a second?
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes.
Is that gonna be put on the next meeting for that purpose? Or,
Or do you just want to put it on whenever you have the information and submit it to us?
When do I have to let you know, Aaron, to get on the next meeting?
The week before the meeting, which is June 4th, so it may make sense to just have the plans revised whenever you can get them done, and we'll then get it on the agenda, at the next possible agenda before the planning board. I'd hate to assign it to the June 4th meeting, which doesn't give a lot of time to revise those 3 sets of plans, so.
I'm just wondering if it shouldn't be continued to a date certain, if you weren't ready, you'd just push
How
it
long you
off.
figure it'll take to get the plans? How long you figure it'll take to get the house plans? Mr. Jim Aho can probably come up with those driveway plans quick.
Like to have it as soon as possible.
Yeah, as soon as possible, we could.
If you want to put it on the next meeting, and if you don't have enough time,
We'll
just
let you
send in
know.
a letter and we'll
That'll
push
be
it
good.
off.
Thank you.
Let me say, we put on for next meeting under old business,
Yep.
and then
If there's a problem, I'll let you know.
then just forward a letter to us requesting a future date.
Right, thank you.
So we have the motions made and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Yes. Chair votes yes. So we have that, and we'll put it on for the next meeting. Thank you.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. That matter is approved. Moving along, the next matter is going to be Marginal Street. We can set that up while we're getting our plans together. Sure, let me just get my notes here together. This is, oh. Okay, moving along with the agenda, the next matter is a site plan amendment, 141 Marginal Street. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Saho Development LLC, formerly known as Brazzi Development LLC, to amend a previously approved site plan for property located on 106 Marginal Street. The current address of the subject property is 141 Marginal Street. The proposal amendment to the plan includes relocating parking spaces previous proposed on the ground floor of the 6-story dormitory to the landscape area east of the proposed building. The ground floor will provide space for accessory use serving the students located in the building. The applicant isn't proposing any changes to the previous approved building, which includes 31,003 square feet of building dormitory with 510 beds. An additional parking space is proposed with the revised site plan, totaling 221 spaces, with access via a footbridge to additional parking spaces at the UMass Riverview parking lot. The 174,767 square foot is located in the institutional zoning district and requires site plan approval under section 11.4 of the zoning code. May we have the applicant, please?
For the record, Mr. Chairman, James Flood, 549 Rogers Street, Lowell, representing Soho Development LLC, which is the successor to Brazzi Development, which was the original party before this board. With me tonight is Jim McClutchy from Soho, and also Bernie Paquin, our project engineer. The request is to amend the previously approved site plan for the UMass Lowell dorm. After construction started, the university came to Jim and said they would like to add a fitness center for the basement of the building, which involved removing some of the parking spaces and adding the fitness center. What we've done is we've added parking spaces over here that we lost in the basement. The net result is we've gone from, I'm back here, gone from 220 parking spaces on site to 221 parking spaces on site. There are a few comments from the city, and we don't have problems with really any of them. The landscape plan was prepared and was submitted to the board, and I don't know whether it's been circulated, but it was submitted last week. Traffic engineer wanted to make the new parking area one way around, which we don't have a problem with. Go in one way and we'll mark it. And we'll also put a pedestrian crosswalk along the front that will show that it's a pedestrian walkway. There was also a request for an easement, a drainage easement, through a tunnel that goes underneath the railroad tracks. I did that back in 2009, and it was delivered to the city I don't know what happened to it, but it was done. So we have no problem redoing that. And there's also a request, I think, on the sketch that was sent from wastewater for an easement along just that boundary line. But I think the intention was for the easement to go up to the property, down along the boundary line, down to this tunnel. So the water would flow through that tunnel. And we don't have a problem adding that area, but it wasn't shown on the plan. So we don't have any problem with any of the comments. I think this is a good addition to the building for the students. It's a quality of life addition to it. And but everything is underway, and we'd ask that you approve this amendment. I'm going to turn it over to Bernie. He can go over the engineering and answer any other questions as to the design.
Bernie Paquin, engineer with Dana Perkins. Like to review the changes that have been made. At this point in time, the architects have been working on the interior of the building, and we have additional information which makes our plan a little bit more content to it. What was changed, as Jim mentioned, is that this is the new parking area right here. The traffic engineer has suggested that this parking area be a one-way around in a counterclockwise direction. That certainly can be done. He would also like to see some additional landscaping for these 3 spaces right here, which again can be done, and also a painted walkway right across here. One of the additions to the site plan has been a sidewalk in front of the building for the entire length. That will now connect to an additional crosswalk across the paved area and connect to the existing sidewalk from Middlesex Street onto Marginal Street. So there will be a direct sidewalk all the way around to there. This is our landscaping plan. We have prepared that and submitted it middle of last week. It does conform with the requirements for internal green space, as well as a number of trees being proposed. It complies with that requirement as well. Based on additional information from the architects, we have revised the drainage system a little bit. We now have piping which will discharge the roof runoff from the building to the different recharge areas located on site. There are 4 of them, all over, spread out within the site. We have also added the piping to direct that runoff from the roof runoff. Curbing is being proposed, and it has been changed as well. All of the curbing in the front of the building will be granite, vertical granite. Curbing in this interior portion will also be vertical granite. This portion right here does not have any curbing except for the entrance. And then this curbing will be the Cape Cod berm on the exterior of this outer parking area. That has been revised since the original approval. And one of the requests was also to add an additional passing gate for pedestrian passage. I believe it's in this location right here.
No, it's down below.
Straight along the road.
Right here?
Easterly portion?
It does, it says the easterly portion,
Yeah, right
correct?
on the end of the road.
That's the end of that road that was coming in,
Yeah.
not by the car wash, but by the other street?
It's gonna be a gate on both sides,
Okay.
gate on both sides.
Because the other way
Right.
was where we had the problem, we talked about the bridge, but then we had a gate to let
Right,
pedestrians
so they
walk
could
out
walk
that way to
around.
go all the way around.
Right, correct.
Okay.
So that was what was approved before, so the condition was, the request that that remain the same. Is that correct?
Right.
Yep.
Okay,
That's not a problem.
right. That was just for foot traffic that we had, people coming in that way to go around if they wanted to instead of going over the bridge.
Right, they could walk out and walk up to the campus, right. And the only other thing, and I didn't understand his comment, but, I mean, I think it might be similar to what he said on Middlesex Street. He's talking about,
What number? On the comment, is it from Aaron, or is it from someone else? Extent of the drive aisle accessing the proposed parking spaces east of the building, additional landscaping, island or barrier should be placed north of the 3 center parking spaces?
That's this location right here.
Okay. You know what that, you want to address that, Aaron?
Yeah, that's basically addressing the comment Eric Eby had provided about the one-way traffic. And it's, as originally proposed, was two-way, and there's a lot of space there. The central parking aisle is 3 parking spaces with no real delineation on particularly the north side. It's only painted lanes. So the comment was to provide an island or barrier. It doesn't have to necessarily be landscaping. If there's space, that's fine, but some sort of curbing there to better delineate the drive aisle as someone's driving around that center part, so they're not taking that corner too short, too sharp, taking out a rear
and I
view
think
light.
we'd be willing to mark the aisle with arrows showing one way. I think that would do it. I just think that's a little extra.
And Aaron, you were asking for curbing, where exactly on that?
You see the 3 parking space in the center of the
Yeah.
proposed new lot on the north end of the north parking space.
Right, that seems reasonable.
That's this area right here. We could meet with the planning department if that's appropriate.
So,
We could certainly meet with the planning department if that's appropriate. If it were a one-way counterclockwise motion, the aisle widths may be reduced. So maybe that would, we could find a compromise.
Okay.
There's one other thing, if I could. I didn't realize the elevation of the building has changed at the request of the university, and I'll have Jim McClutchy explain that.
Yeah, on the request of the university, we added some masonry to the exterior of the building, which, in order to do that, we changed the design of the elevation you see on the left there. And this is through working with the university. It had some peaked roofs before, and it was all ephes siding. There was no masonry on it at all. And they suggested these changes, and this is what we come up with. And I know it's part of the site plan approval that we should have an approved elevation, and this is not the same as the one that we originally had approved, so. But it does add some brick and adds a little bit of more color to the building.
So how much higher is the elevation now proposed to what it was in the previous site plan approval?
It's actually lower.
Oh, it's lower, okay.
It's actually lower, yes.
And can you tell me by how much, if you know offhand?
Pardon me?
By how much, if you know? What's the difference?
I think about, in the highest peak was about 12 feet higher than it is now. There was a tower in the middle of the building that stood up much higher.
So you're reducing the height by about 12 feet, okay.
Yes. Just on one portion of the building, not the entire building. But- And we redesigned it to make it a little more institutional, student housing looking than residential, and it's pretty similar to a lot of the designs that are being put in place in Boston now. A lot of residential properties are like this. It's like the latest design style. So the university's happy with it. We're happy with it. It had some masonry. It's a more durable building for sure, and You know, we just want to make sure that you understand that it's a change. Same windows, same window layout, same number of rooms. Okay?
Anybody else on behalf of the applicant? No? Okay. Anybody here this evening want to speak in regards to this project, either for or against, or have any comments? Anybody want to speak in regards to the project?
Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board, for the record, my name is Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. Wish to be recorded in favor of this project. I've spoken in favor of it in a prior hearing, about probably a year ago, I think. And I urge that the planning board unanimously vote in favor of this with any conditions that might be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Anyone else want to speak in regards to the project? Any comments? Anybody want to speak in regards to the project? Anybody else want to speak? Okay, hearing none. So basically, this change came up because the university wanted to put
Fitness center.
the fitness center in the basement. So if you wanted to take out the parking, leave some parking, there's still some parking that's going to be left on the...
Absolutely, right.
And I see by the comments from the fire department, they're happy to see the parking outside the building.
They didn't say that last time, though, but I saw that comment, right?
Yeah, they say it now, they're like, we'd much rather see it outside than underneath. I'm sure it's easier to, you know, for fire apparatus to get in there, plus, I don't know, I guess less explosion of cars with gas and what's under the building, I'm guessing, but, so I did see their comments that they were much more in favor of it outside the building, so, okay. So at this point in time, any of the board members have any questions?
I got a couple.
Sure, Mr. Lockhart, start with you.
I'm just wondering about the final landscape plan, Aaron. You satisfied with what you see under your comments, are you?
I had a chance to review it preliminarily. We haven't reviewed it with the landscape designer in DPD, but it essentially addresses the only concern we had to provide some, two of them being one, first, that there's some sort of screen or barrier in between the neighborhood where you have a pretty big change in the scale of the buildings. The architecture is done very nicely, but the landscaping along the edge is a way to kind of screen the size and magnitude of the size of the project. And then two, just to meet the landscape requirements in the parking lot, which appears to be done in both cases.
Okay,
And we've worked with the applicant a number of times.
Continue to work with them.
We're happy to do that.
Yeah,
We've worked
okay.
met with the applicant a number of times to address those.
All right, so landscaping. Continue to work with them on the landscaping.
They told me they've met with staff a couple times, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And on your memo, Aaron, it's dated May 15th, item number 6, comments from the wastewater utility relative to the potential for a sewer surcharge during heavy rain events. That issue, I assume there's one comment sheet from the department here that's not checked off on the top. I assume it's from wastewater, that says corrections needed, request proponent at a 20-foot wide drainage easement on the eastern boundary of the property from Marginal Street to the boundary with the MBTA adjacent parcel. Has that been fully resolved? Have we discussed that enough?
Well, it's going to be a little change, Mr. Lockhart. It's going to be along the easterly boundary, but it's also going to be along the northerly boundary to get to that tunnel.
All right, so that's all.
Yeah, that's all, there's no problem with that.
All right, I
problem.
wasn't clear on that,
Yep.
that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Anyone else? Board members, questions? No? Mr. Gentleman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it sounds like the only substantial change to the design is this little parking section that you have here
To the site, correct.
to the
right.
site, right? And that's due to the fact that you putting the fitness center in, moving the parking outside.
Right.
Takes away some of the open space, which is unfortunate, but we need to have the parking, so I think it makes sense. Circling that new parking area, is there any kind of barrier there on the perimeter of that new parking area?
Just landscaping. Just landscaping.
So the parking spaces will drive right into the grass landscaping?
Correct. Yep.
Seems like it might be a good idea to have some kind of barrier there, a berm or Go ahead.
Surface water from the rear of the building from about this point right here flows through this parking lot into the drainage structures located right here. So that has been purposely left open with no curbing for the drainage to flow through.
So, DPD, do you guys have any comment on that?
Yeah, one, I think, potential and simple solution to that is to include the curb stops for the parking spaces. So that way you can prevent the cars from, pulling into the landscape area, which particularly in this case where it is part of the stormwater drainage system, it's important that cars aren't going to rip that up. The curb stops typically have space for water to flow through, so that would be, I think,
No, that makes sense. That was my concern, is that you see that a lot where you have a parking lot that leads directly into landscaping. The cars end up pulling up there, it kind of ruins the landscaping, and, this is a dormitory. Who knows what might happen there, so. I think, in general, my addition, it sounds like you are willing to comply with all of the comments made by DPD in this memo of May 15th.
That's correct.
And
Curb stops would be a solution in this area right here.
Okay, and I would just add another condition that you work with DPD on the design of that particular parking area, including curb stops, as well as an island of some kind on the northerly side of those 3 parking spots to facilitate the flow of traffic around there.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else have any questions? Attorney Claremont, none?
No questions.
Jerry, no. No, any questions? So this will just be for the fitness center, what's that, just for the students who live there? Or would it be for any of you Lowell kids who go there, or how does that work?
My understanding is just for the residents of the building.
So it wouldn't be for any public people coming, is what I'm getting at, okay. So you need like your UMass ID, obviously, to
Probably
get
have
in.
a pass
Right.
card to get in.
So it's not for public access to come, and you don't have to worry about other traffic coming in?
You looking for a membership, Mr.
No, I
Chairman?
just want to make sure we're not bringing other cows on site.
You don't need it.
Yeah, right, that's a
So
legitimate
I'm just
question.
curious if, if the fitness center is going to entertain other people besides students, and then, then we have to look at other things, but if it doesn't, that's fine, so. But I think the main thing on this project was the real big thing way back when we started to begin with, was getting that footbridge over the railroad tracks, which
Gonna happen.
Cushions up
at
a
first
lot.
took a long time, and then was said we'd never get it, then you finally got it, and that really set up the whole project, so.
Yep, they got it from the MBTA, which was great.
Right, and at least now we still, I like the fact that he talked about the granite curbing and a little more the sidewalk and the foot traffic. I think that's very nice and complimentary to the site.
Right down the middle section.
Yeah, the foot traffic is definitely big, because you will have a lot of students who will use the foot traffic. So I have no other further comments. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one other question. I see on the plan here a cell tower easement.
Yep,
What's that all about?
Oh, yeah.
that's there. I don't know who's on it.
Okay, so there's an
there.
existing cell tower and there's an easement.
Been
Okay,
there for a while.
Yeah,
thanks.
that came before us a long time ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
I mean, I think that was there before you guys even started,
No,
back one?
no, that came after we first started,
after you first started, okay?
There was originally one on there.
Yeah.
The additionals came on.
but you gave the easement after we started.
Oh, we
Yeah.
gave it the easement.
After we started, right,
Right, yeah. But I mean, there was one prior, and then they added to the pole, right?
right.
Like under our zoning, they requested to add to the pole, right, instead of create new ones, right? Okay. Any other board members have any questions, no? What's the request of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion for the approval of the site plan amendment as presented, with the condition that the applicant continue to work with DPD on the landscaping plan.
And I think the other questions there, they're gonna put in the curb stops and
Oh, in the parking area.
and work with DPD for the parking area in the back that Mr. Gemman requested. Would that be acceptable?
Cover it?
Yeah, and I think, do we want to include a condition that the applicant comply with each of the 7 points brought out by, DPD in the May 15th
That memo, yeah.
memorandum?
Okay, that motion's made, and
That would cover it, yeah.
Yeah, as well as the, working with DPD to design the curb stops and a island on the northerly side of the 3 spaces in the middle of that new parking area.
the Motion made and seconded by
I'll
Mr.
second
Den with
that.
those conditions. Any discussion? If not, we got, motion made, all in favor, say aye.
Aye?
Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none. Matter is approved. Good luck and wish you well.
Thank you. I know. Huh? My friend, Mr. Fowler. See you later, I'll talk to you later. Yep.
Okay, moving along on the old business, we do have one matter, which is 685-689 Lawrence Street. Lowell Planning Board will hear a request from the project proponent to discuss the project status for a development project located at the above address. The project received site plan approval to raise a portion of the existing mill building located on site and to construct 24 residential units, 11 of which were to be townhouse units along Andrew Street. The applicant is seeking a modification of the original decision in order to allow the certificate of occupancy be issued for 2 of the remaining townhouse units on Andrew Street. May we hear from the applicant, please?
If I could have 1 second, Mr.
Sure,
Chairman,
take
I
your
just
time,
want to put this together and... Sure, if you want to put it there. Sure. Okay, Mr. Chairman,
Okay, Mr. Flood?
for the
You're
record,
up.
again, James Flood, 549 Rogers Street, Lowell, Mass., on behalf of Mr. Frawley, who's here with me tonight. I passed out a little package put together by Mr. Frawley as to the project, and I gave you a copy of the original decision. I also have some pictures of the site today. The original approval of this project was back in 2006, and the first component was the construction of the townhouse units on Andrew Street. Original approval was for 50 units altogether. Mr. Frawley has constructed 12 residential units. He sold 8. 8 have been sold, 2 are rented, and the other 2 have been completed, but no occupancy, and I don't have a list of the conditions, do I? Oh, yeah. I guess he's met a couple of times with Aaron to discuss the issuance of the occupancy permits, and I think it was felt that he's best to come in front of this board. I don't have the conditions here.
I think we have a copy. I think
Yeah, we do.
it was given to us by our staff. Let's see where I can pull them up.
I have a copy. That's a copy of the recorded decision. Now, according to the decision, there were 7 specific conditions. It had to do with the whole project, not just a portion of it. And, you know, the first one, receive affirmative comment from the city engineer and address comments necessary to receive the approval. Well, I mean, we've had no problems with the city engineer. They've approved everything, and I think they've signed off on all of the occupancy permits to date. Receive affirmative comment from the fire department and address any comments he receives from the fire department. He hasn't received any. He's got fire certificates for everything that's been sold. Finalize the details of a 15-foot right-of-way specifically regarding the proposed parking along the right-of-way, and provide DPD with written legal documentation proving same. Well, there's a 15-foot utility easement running through the property to get to the back. There is a parking easement along the back of the units where they have the right to park and get into their garages. So that was done, and there is an easement on record. He was granted a waiver from drainage calculation. He was granted a special permit, reducing the amount of land area per dwelling unit. And then there's a question of a final landscape plan, which hasn't been completed yet. And wording in purchase and sale agreements telling him of the prior industrial use. So, based on these conditions, I think the only thing that hasn't been satisfied to date is the final landscaping plan. But the project's only a third of the way through. And I know there's been discussions with Aaron about trees, and Dave's willing to do it once everything is completed, but right now you've got 2 units sitting there. As a matter of fact, one of the units was broken into, all the wiring was taken. So it's either they sit, the bank forecloses and the board doesn't get anything, or you issue the occupancy permits and let them proceed further. I think that's it. And I think this is like a phased development. I mean, you could look at, well, I shouldn't say this, but look at Rogers Street. All the landscaping there isn't done yet. It's done as phased out. Same with probably Alan Kazanjian's phased project. All of them. That's the way it's done. Plus, in order to really work on that parking lot, he's going to have to wait till the other building is torn down, because it's going to involve a crane going in there and digging it up. He's dealt with the DEP. We've given you a copy of the latest report from the DEP saying that he's taken care of any concerns with the AUL. And I just don't know why he's being held hostage on the occupancy permit. Dave's here to answer any questions. He's done most of the talking with Aaron, and he'd just like to proceed. And I think we all know what the economy's been in the last couple of years, and it doesn't hurt. It doesn't help to have two units just sitting there.
I'm just passing the pictures to the other board members, Mr. Flood. So.
They look nice.
Me.
Aaron, anytime at this point in time, the Division of Planning and Development want to discuss? I know you've been up on numerous occasions. And I know you did look over you gave us a copy of the conditions, which I believe,
This one.
but he gave us the original conditions that I think had like 14 conditions.
they're in there.
I don't know which ones Mr. Flood has it as 7.
I gave you the decision that's on record at the registry,
Oh, okay,
Right here.
It's right here. It's the original decision.
okay. I'm just looking at the,
Maybe I
January 11th.
copied the same page twice on your copies, too.
no, I'm just looking at the conditions that, were made and seconded on, on the meeting, okay.
This is what's on record at the registry. I know there's probably talk about other conditions, but they weren't included in the recorded decision that Mr. Erickson signed on behalf of the board.
Just for the board's reference, the decision letter that I've been working from with the applicant is dated January 11th, 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Right here.
and then this one that Mr. Flood gave us is January 9th, 2006.
So this one that's dated January 11th is the latest and applicable decision.
I see that one now. I didn't have that one. I didn't have that one, Tom.
Okay. Now, I'm just trying to look at the two that was submitted to us and try to figure out, one looks like it's a year later.
Yep. But it's still a two-phase development, so.
And any comments you want to make at this
Yeah.
point in time, I guess? So what happened is they come in for an occupancy permit, they didn't get it because of the conditional approval?
Yes, and in the decision referencing the plans that were approved on the date 2007, there's a couple of issues that we felt needed to be addressed before the certificate of occupancies could be released. One of them certainly is the final landscape plan to be produced and approved. There's certainly some challenging variables with this site, particularly in the parking lot area. We've also addressed there's been a number of communications with the applicant and developer. The easement and access easement issue, there's a rather thick deed out there that has a number of easements, and it appears in those communications that there is access for particularly the residents who live in the condominiums what are identified under phase 1 and 2 in this submission tonight. So they actually have access provided through those easements into the site. One of the actually bigger issues or concerns that we have is that the parking lot right now is only built to binder course. There's no parking that's striped out there. There's no circulation pattern through signage or street markings. So right now there's the 2 parking spaces that are provided in tandem in the townhouses. And there's an area that's paved out there certainly, and there's access from Lawrence and onto Andrews. But there's no actual parking spaces delineated on the parking lot, as was approved with the decision letter. So it's not just the conditions that we're concerned with, it's the actual, the project isn't developed as to the plans that were approved. Relative to the stormwater, it does appear that there are waivers to the requirement for a stormwater plan or, calculations originally. We did note, though, that there are some changes with the location of catch basins on the site, as was approved and as noted by Mr. Flood, as the previous city engineer had approved. They may work. There's just no indication that, based on the way they've been moved, that they function as originally approved. The bigger concern, though, is, again, there isn't a final course of paving on So the actual inverts, the catch basin is about 1.5 inches, 2 inches above the paved surface, so water doesn't drain into the catch basin. It would just sheet flow off of the parking lot to either the fringe of the site or off the site completely. It also adds additional problems with the quality of the maintenance of the paving. So those. Oh, and then lastly, just a fairly simple issue, but the dumpster needs to be screened per section 6.6 in the zoning code. It's not specifically addressed in the decision letter, but it's a zoning requirement nonetheless. So those are kind of I think 3 or 4 premier issues with this.
Aaron, in that memo that you outlined these 4 concerns, you said, and indication that the stormwater infrastructure functions as approved by the board. What type of documentation do we need for that? Just a letter from the...
Yeah, so I had a conversation with the city engineer just to kind of indicate what that might look like. And any kind of documentation that they can show that the stormwater infrastructure as it was installed and graded, the site grading works substantially similar to the plan that was approved. The major difference really, other than the fact that the paving isn't equal to the elevation of the inverted catch basin, where the water would go into, is that on the exit onto Andrew Street, which is kind of west of the townhouse, there was a catch basin on the right side as well as the left side of the drive. The one on the right side was not included. So what happens is, in the board, if you've been there, there's quite a grade from Andrew Street to the parking lot out back. Water then sheds pretty quickly down there, and you can actually see it. It actually just runs right across the landscape island that was put in there. So it's not really being directed into the catch basins.
Does that relate to the fact that the final pavement was not installed?
It could be both. I mean, it's hard to say without a lot of detail there, but I think it could be, put it this way, it could be dealt with without that catch basin. It's not necessarily, it's not needed to have a catch basin there to work adequately. There's the one on the left side, it's farther down on the drive lane, but there's also the landscape island, which could work as part of a stormwater system, mitigation system. It just needs to be done a little bit differently. There's some things they could do. So it doesn't have to be a full stormwater plan with calculations, but they just need to show that it's working properly. And of course, the final piece that's really needed for it to work properly is a final coat of pavement, which would also be required before the parking spaces could be painted on to the site.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead, Mr. Fischett. I was just going to say, also in our packet, we did receive a letter from one of the neighbors up there. I think it's, I'm not sure if I pronounced this right, it's Chad Bantis? No, okay. Okay, so does anybody here tonight want to speak in regards to this project, one way or another? Sure. If you just come to the podium, give us your name and address for the record, sir, if you would.
Chairman and members of the board, my name is Chad Banches. I live at 29 Andrews Street in Lowell.
Okay, so you're the author of the letter that we received, thank you.
Correct. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. As outlined in the letter, there's numerous issues with this project. Mr. Clausen addressed many of them, but I'd just like to reiterate them myself as someone who lives there and deals with them day in and day out. As you recall, this project was approved 5 years ago. There's been ample time for the conditions to have been met. By no means are these conditions onerous. They're standard for any project. I think any developer would see that it's reasonable to complete these at the beginning of the project. As noted, the parking surface is inadequate for long-term use. It's missing the secondary wear course, and significant potholes have formed over time, some the size of small cars. They've been patched on 2 different occasions. One thing that did come to light after I moved in was that there's hazardous materials underneath the parking lot, as evidenced by an AUL that was put in place by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. Due to the deterioration of the parking surface, on March 2nd, 2012, a notice of noncompliance was issued on this property, which is particularly concerning to me because I have an infant daughter. There's children that play in that parking lot. There's kids that ride their bikes on this parking lot. And when I read this AUL, it states that there's significant risk to humans who come into contact with the surface soil. So I think it's imperative that that secondary wear course of pavement be put down immediately to address not only the deterioration of the parking lot, but the drainage issues mentioned by Mr. Clausen. I also reviewed the original meeting minutes from the January 4th, 2007 meeting, and there is mention from the engineer on the project that the roof drains are supposed to drain into the catch basins on site, which currently is not in place. We are experiencing water damage to our units due to the absence of rain gutters and catch basins, and I think it adds to the whole drainage issue that's on site. In addition, the planning board did grant the waiver on the drainage study. In my opinion, in light of the AUL, it seems that maybe a drainage study should have been conducted to ensure that drain water from the site isn't permeating into the soil that's contaminated and running off into the Concord River watershed, which the site flows into. Again, the green space is not complete. I think we'd all agree 5 years is plenty of time to complete that. It would also add to the character of the units and add curb appeal, and I think would have helped to sell the units. It was mentioned that all 12 units are complete. To my knowledge, Unit 13 is still incomplete and still is only studs inside. So the fact that even all the 12 units aren't complete after 5 years is curious to me. Easements were mentioned. I would urge the planning department to work and ensure that the easements are in the best interest of all parties. There are no parking lines in place, and the dumpster enclosure is missing. I ask that you carefully consider this. This townhouse, I invested in Lowell. I moved my family to Lowell. I invested in the city, and this represents, my family's future. And I moved to the city under the reasonable expectation that the planning board's requirements would be met and that the developer would work to complete those requirements. And I think, again, 5 years was plenty of time to do that. Should you consider releasing the occupancy permits, I would ask that sufficient collateral is in place to ensure completion of this project, and that timelines are established so that the unit owners there don't have to wait another 5 years to have this project completed. I'm open to any questions that you may have, and again, thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to speak in regards to this project?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Planning Board. My name is Jeffrey Vance. I'm a resident at 27 Andrews Street. I am here also to ask the Planning Board not to make any adjustments to this development until the developer comes in complete compliance with the plan that he submitted to this planning board years ago. I have some pictures of the site.
Good, Coach. Yep.
These are pictures of the parking lot.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that, yeah. Okay. I'll pass them down.
These are also pictures of the site further down the street that Mr. Fowley's business partner, Mr. Dowell, moved on to after the fact. If you compare them, you'll see why most of the residents of the Red Mill condominiums are a little upset with the developer.
Excuse me.
Even the smallest of issues with Mr. Fowley, he's just adamantly opposed to completing any aspect of this project at all. I also believe he's made it be known that if he sells these last 2 units, the mill that he has the little thing over there of he's going to be selling. I'm not certain of that, but the rumor is that he has a buyer for that mill. So once he sells those 2 units, he's gone.
These are the ones that are down the street that don't get into this project, so everything's separate.
I think if the chairman, again, reviews Chad's letter, I reviewed that, it kind of details quite a few of the issues that need to be addressed. I strongly suggest that you don't approve this. I mean, most of the people there are young people. This is their first acquisition, and Mr. Foley, through his actions, is just trying to run them into the ground. I don't know if it needs to be said, but currently he is in the rear for the parking lot, his share of the plowing expenses for last winter. He's in the rear for his condominium association fees for thousands of dollars. We just had to raise our association fees $40 so that the 8 individuals that pay their association fee on a regular basis can make up for the fact that Mr. Foley is constantly in the rear. Again, this is the developer that we're dealing with. I think it's pertinent that the board knows this before they make any decision on releasing any occupancy permits on the last 2 units. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Kelly, and I live at 31 Andrews Street. I was actually the first person to purchase a townhouse at that development, and lots of things were promised to us at that time. One specifically that's very important to me is the pavement of the parking lot. Currently, it does not, because it is so low, it also does not meet the top of the pavement that's in the garage. So you actually have to kind of bump up over that, and it's causing some wear on my garage floor as well, which I'm going to have replaced. So I agree and share the same concerns that Jeff and Chad both do, and would really like you to strongly consider not changing your decision on those occupancy permits. Thank you for your time.
How long have you resided there?
November will be 5 years.
Thank you.
It's not here. I don't know where it went. It's not here. I didn't take it.
For the record, I have to ask if anybody else wants to speak, even though I know there's nobody else here, but for the record, I have to ask, anybody else want to speak in regards to this matter?
I didn't take it.
Okay. At this point, nobody else wants to speak at this time. At this point in time, I will turn it over to any questions the board members may have.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure, absolutely, Mr. Bichette, go ahead.
Just, comments regarding the timing of the possible development or redevelopment of the mill building. I think the concern is clearly you have existing units that are that have been sold. Obviously, residents have been occupying that for the better part of 5 years. I think that the quality of that housing stock is affected in a large way is the condition of the parking in the rear of that site. I don't know when the developer is going to be able to finish that entire site, but I think the functionality of those existing units are paramount to the parking lot being completed, along with the landscaping. And I did drive back there and noticed the situation with the drop from the existing parking garages, and you can see and I think a gentleman's letter commented about some of the boards that were still in the ground. But obviously, I think that you can see the concrete is starting to deteriorate as a result of the difference in the elevation. Also the drainage of that site, and driving back there, you could see the brand new pavement, the the hardtop patch that was put in there recently, which leads me to believe that, although it's recent, I don't know how long it's been deteriorated. Obviously, we saw some photos that showed the potholes and in the water standing in and around that site. I just think in order at this point to even complete the build-out and occupancy of those units without having this element of the site completed, I think has a detrimental effect on those units. And at this point, I think it would be imperative to have some sort of a plan in place to address those concerns along the rear of that property. I mean, I don't know how many more years the developer, the owner, expects that before those mill buildings are completed, but I think at this point in time, we all recognize we have residents living in those units, and I think the quality of that housing stock, I can remember when this project was approved, it actually was pretty exciting, and I think when you look at the streetscape on Andrews Street, I think it actually looks very nice. But I think we're getting to a point where we're going to compromise that without the completion of the rear of this site. I think it's going to affect the marketability of the homes. I think it's going to create some issues for the people that are living there. So I certainly, those are my concerns. I think when you go back there and take a look at it, and you look at the rear of those sites and the garages and the parking lot, and also even I pulled in off of Andrews Street, not realizing it's a one-way. I think that needs to be marked a little better, in my opinion. And it's a narrow road, so obviously that's important. But so I think there's some. I think it's just important. I think we all wanted to see a quality development here. I think again was pleased with what was initially approved out there, but I think we'll have let the residents down, and clearly if we don't allow this to be addressed and left in the current state. So that's my concerns, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fischette. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank the residents for coming out here this evening and sticking with us through this long meeting with the Celtics game on and all. But I appreciate you sticking with us, because I know these can be long and drawn out, and your feedback and input is vital to what we do. You know, we sit every night and we approve plans and we apply conditions to them, and the conditions are what we do. You know, it's important to us, and we expect them to be complied with. And they're not subject to the phasing of development. You know, they're not subject to financing. As far as I'm concerned, you start selling those units, the conditions should be met, unless there's some extenuating circumstance on a condition that doesn't impact the residents greatly. In this case, that is clearly not the case. So, you know, I would be happy to make the motion to deny a request to seek modification on the original decision here. And not only that, I would encourage the planning department to take aggressive action to see to it that the most important conditions of this proposal are met quickly, such as the paving and the elements that are causing rot, you know, the lack of gutters and drainage that are diminishing the investment that these people have made. So, you know, I'll wait till see if my colleagues have any other comments, but those are my feelings.
Thank you. Mr. Lockhart?
Yeah, I agree totally with what Mr. Burchett and Mr. Gendron have said. It's just void of anything, especially in the parking area. There's just nothing there. I had the thought that maybe this AUL, what is it, the non-compliance, Mass DEP's AUL audit inspection thing may have had an effect on, you know, what you're willing to do here, but I notice here that it says that the dates when non-compliance occurred or was observed, one was December 20th, 2011, and a second time, February 10th of this year. I think there's been plenty of time to to make these improvements and to meet our original conditions, and, my sentiments are to deny as well.
Attorney Claremont?
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly. 5 years is way too long to wait for this thing to be completed properly. I understand the circumstances may be difficult for everyone, but we've got people living in there now, and it's not fair to them. Just a question, there's no performance bond on this project, is that correct?
No, there wasn't anything issued originally for this project, no.
Yeah, I'm concerned that this thing is just going south quickly, and it's totally unfair to the residents, especially that paving issue. To live with that for 5 years is not fair. So I would not be in support of issuing occupancy permits until those conditions are met.
The only thing I can say to that is that that parking lot is not part of this development. The parking for each of these units is in the garage under. Now, I haven't seen what I think you're talking about that easement area in the back. Is that the big? I haven't seen that. I know that Mr. Frawley at one point had offered to do that in some negotiations with the association, and it was not accepted. There's no question that the dumpster has to be fenced in. He's aware of that. But I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's a bad economy. It's a development that you can't expect him to go in and repave a parking lot if he's going to bring a big machine in there to rip it up to work on the other portion of the development. You can't expect that. And I mean, you don't put a final pavement or road on until the project's completed. You know that.
Well, you also don't expect the project to take 5 years when I'm hearing that other projects went on in the interim. I mean, that's not fair to these people.
What other project? Dave, he doesn't have another project.
All right.
He doesn't.
It's not relevant anyway, but 5 years is too long. That's my opinion.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we deny the request to modify the original decision here and encourage the planning department to take aggressive action to see that the conditions are met.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Yes, all in opposition? Having none, the motion carries. Oh, we have some pictures here for somebody? I'm sorry, did you bring the pictures? Okay, put it in for the record, okay, I'm sorry. All right, he wants those for the record if you don't mind? Oh, you don't need them? Okay. You see it every day? Sorry about that, but. Okay, moving along, we have notices in budding towns. I entertain a motion to place those on file.
So moved.
Okay. ZBA notices, I know we have 4 or 5 of them, I think most of them in the packet that we received. The first 3 go along with signage. Couple for Dunkin' Donuts, Middlesex Street, Bridge Street, and another sign for Acme Sign Corp. On Plain Street.
Chairman, I make a motion that those 3, can we do 3?
Sure.
Be referred to the design planner.
Okay, motion's made.
Second.
And second, all in favor say aye. Aye. And the last one, does anybody have any comments on the last one for a 1291 Barnum Ave to allow an accessory structure that does not meet the height and front yard setback requirement? Anybody have any comments on that?
No comment.
Okay, having no comments on that, moving along. Any further general correspondences from ZBA? Aaron, I'll start with you.
I just wanted to hand out, I'll pass this out after the meeting, a notice from Northern Middlesex Council of Governments on an expedited ENF for a 762 parking space garage proposed for the South Campus. This is kind of in the area we were just talking about tonight, 141 Bridge, or excuse me, marginal. It's just it's a letter from NEMCOG to the state, and I wanted to give a copy to the board. But apparently there'll be an expanded notice of project change for this project, as well as the five-year capital plan for the university that will be filed no later than September. So there'll apparently be an opportunity to look at that. I don't have any plans on this, but if the board wishes, we can dig those out and forward those to you.
Okay, any further updates? You have for us? I believe in our discussion earlier, you told me that this could be Craig's last meeting with us?
Oh, really?
Can you confirm or deny?
I need to get back to a microphone for this. This is very good news. Craig has been, I think, promoted is absolutely the correct term for this, to the Urban Renewal Project Manager, which is a...
Congratulations, Craig, and thanks for all your hard work with us.
Really?
He's
You're gonna
been,
miss the late nights?
including tonight.
Oh, are there night meetings associated with that job as well?
Aaron, does that mean we're getting you back, or?
Yes, I'm sorry to say so, for the time being at least.
So that why you put everything on tonight?
Craig, glad to hear you're staying with the city. That,
Yeah, very good. Thanks for all
be
your
a
hard
big
work.
asset there, I'm
Appreciate
sure.
it. So,
You looking for a motion to adjourn?
Sure, I think so, right? Anybody else have any further correspondences? No?
So move then.
Okay, made a motion to adjourn. That was in Farley's project. Okay. Motion to adjourn by Mr. Gentleman. Second. Made and second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. We have adjourned. Good night, and thank you, everyone.